Good morning. The House will please come to order. Welcome, members, to the fifth day of the 66th Wyoming Legislature's budget session, Friday, February 18th. If you'll join the Reverend Bob Thompson, First Presbyterian Church, in our prayer.
Good morning, and thank you again for the privilege of praying with you during this week. Hear these words from Matthew 5. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under the bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In that same way, let your light shine before others, so they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Eternal God, creator of the universe, great and wonderful are your works. Wondrous are your ways. Thank you for the splendid variety of your creation, for the glorious mountains, the roaring rivers, the expansive oceans, and the wide open plains. All creation gives you glory and sings your praise. O Lord of providence, holding the destiny of the nations in your hand, we pray for our state and for our country. Inspire the hearts and minds of these representatives, that they, together with all of our state, may seek first your kingdom and your righteousness, so that order, liberty, and peace may dwell with all people. Take away any mistrust or divisions, and increase in us the recognition that we are all your children. God, as the representatives complete their work this week, I pray for good rest over the weekend. I pray your travel mercies be upon those who head home, and a restful weekend for all, a time to turn their attention to you, their God, and to their families and friends. As these women and men are hard at work, there are many prayer concerns upon their hearts, loved ones in their families, and people from their communities. God, in this moment of silence, we lift up our prayers to the family who is grieving the loss of their two daughters. Wrap your loving arms around them, O God. I pray now for the workers in this building. We are thankful for their dedication. We lift up to you the support staff of the House and the Senate, thankful for their commitment and the wonderful gifts they bring that make this work possible. We pray for the men and women who serve in this building to protect all people. We are thankful for their self-sacrifice and strength. I ask that you bless all people who are in this building today with your peace. God of wisdom and authority, as these leaders seek to govern and discern your will, I pray that your Holy Spirit guide them. May your light be reflected by the decisions they make, so their work may give you glory. May your holy word be a light to our path, guiding us in each step we take. Enlighten the path you would have us walk, that we might always choose the way of your will here on earth as it is in heaven. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
The House will please come to order. Please call the roll.
Convening roll for the fifth day, Friday, February 18th, 2022. Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kinner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. 60 present, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. And we welcome back Representative Brown, and he would like a privilege. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just would like to take a few seconds here to thank this amazing body and not only the people that are in here, but also a lot of the people that are upstairs and out in the lobby. It's a pretty amazing feeling when my phone won't stop going off constantly over the past 2 days, checking in on me to make sure that I was okay. And if there was anything that I needed to, please rely on so-and-so or so-and-so. And I just want to say an incredibly heartfelt thank you to every single one of you that reached out, every single one of you that was saying prayers. The man cold definitely took me down for a few days, but beyond that, I am privileged and honored to share this floor with such amazing souls that were so willing to go out of their ways and help me, and knowing that I had absolutely no ability to get out of bed for 2 days, but I'm back and ready to get into action. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, thank you, Representative Brown. I'm not sure if you were telling us no not to call next time because you were trying to sleep, because you were trying to get some rest, or encouraging us to call the next time. Thank you. Representative Larson, you'd like a privilege. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Privilege of the floor, please.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, we are fortunate, and I'm happy to point out that in the balcony, we have one of our former pages returning, a former neighbor and constituent of mine, Artemis Langford, who is now over the hill attending the University of Wyoming. I think he made a large impact on us, and we would like to welcome him back today.
Hey, Artemis.
Hold back.
Welcome, Marty. Good to see you. Hope your studies are going well. Gives us a thumbs up. Good. Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 17th, 2022 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Haroldson and Provenza.
All right, so members, we're going to go off script just a little bit. Representative Yin has a motion he's going to make on the floor. This will be a motion to amend our joint rules, and that requires a 2/3 vote. It is, he'll make the motion, it is debatable, and then we'll have a roll call on the motion. So, everybody clear what we're doing? The motion, was it provided to everybody, Representative Yin? So the motion as a paper copy or both copy? Email. So if you open your emails, there should be a email from Representative Yin with this proposed joint rule that he'll make a motion on. Representative Yin, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move to amend our joint House and Senate rules, and specifically House Rule 1, by creating a new Rule 1-4, amended to read 1-4, Management Council Policies. No policy adopted by the Management Council on or after February 19th, 2022 shall control action of the House unless adopted by rule of the House.
So members, it is debatable. If you'd like to go into your explanation, Representative Yin, we'll just treat this, I think we'll treat this like second reading or third reading rules. I think that hopefully will keep us moving forward. So if you have questions or comments, you'll get a first time, then we'll go to second time for those who commented, and then Representative Yin will be the final closing out. So that's how we'll proceed. I think that's probably a little better than a committee of the whole type approach. So Representative Yin, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, so I bring forth to you this amended House rule specifically because I had this discussion with many folks, which is that Management Council should hew a little closer to its statutory authorities. So in the past, we've had management councils that were a bit more activist and passed policies that control both the House and the Senate. And while now I don't think that's necessarily the case, I want us to protect both the House, protect our body, to make sure that policies that control us are ones that we approve of as a body and not one that a joint committee bestows on us. So the rule is fairly simple. It does have this language on or after February 19th because we have tacitly accepted that control, but I don't want to throw out all of the Management Council policies that have been done before because I think there's a possible risk there. This motion also is amendable, so if you do feel like you can amend the language, the language is pretty simple, you could make changes. However, I think this language is pretty simple where, look, if there is a policy that we think that should affect us, we as the body should be the ones to decide whether it affects us, not Management Council imposing it on us. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Member first time, Representative Brown, first time. Look at that, right back in the saddle. Gone 2 days, there he is. Representative
Get
Brown.
tired of hearing my voice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you. I just have a quick question on this. Since this is a House rule, could this negate? Well, let me ask two questions here. Number one, is there a mirror rule being provided over in the Senate that would basically give the opportunity for the Senate to do the same thing? And if it's a joint rule that's expressed that would have validity over both bodies, and we decided to not allow something, would that prohibit the joint rule from going into effect or a joint policy going into effect by just the House negating that? So if I could just get some clarification on that, thanks.
Thank you. Any other member first time? First time? Oh, Representative Stiff, my apologies. Stiff?
Yep. Mr. Speaker, I have a somewhat similar question about the scope of control any action. Would this have any impact on Management Council's ability to approve or disapprove interim topics for joint committees or committee consideration? I'm struggling with the scope of the word control. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Eklund.
My question would be down the same lines. I've served as a committee chairman on 2 different committees, and oftentimes you go to Management Council and it isn't just to bring your interim topics, but it's to get fresh minds on it. And they've always been considerate of our interim topics, but at the same time given advice. Sometimes this is way too much, committee, you can't possibly cover that. They've cut us down in prioritized it a bit. I'm curious how much that is going to be affected as we go to management council, because I'm used to one way, and it sounds like we're making a major change and a shift, and I'm not sure that I am ready to make that shift.
Thank you. Madam Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think I'll pile on with the same kind of question. I'm just curious if the bringer could give us an example of a policy that Management Council has passed in the past that no longer would be possible if we pass this rule.
Representative Gray, and then Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this. Appreciate the work we've done with the member from House District 16 on this rule change. In answer to the previous speaker, I think an example of a policy change that would now need to come before the body is something that was done at the last meeting, the dress code change, which did pass, and you could argue is a pretty big change, and I think that would now need to come before the body, that sort of thing. I don't think it affects the interim topic review process. I don't think that's the intent here, although I think Management Council has moved away from really being heavy-handed on that review process and just keeping it the way the committee wants to. That's what I experienced over the last year. So the way I interpret this is that it's about policies. So for example, the dress code policy, the policy regarding committee meetings, we had a policy on that, whether to continue the virtual attendance on that, which the Management Council did decide to do. And the way I interpret the rule is it wouldn't necessarily mean that in the interim something couldn't necessarily go into effect, but I would ask the bringer that question, like on that interim review process. The interim rule that we had on committee meetings, does it apply to that, or would we just come back and ratify it after Management Council approved that process in April, May, or whenever? But I think this is a great step in the right direction, and it continues, I think, the direction that Management Council has been going. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McGuire, then Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So looking at the very last line, I would just invite the bringer of the bill. Was it within your contemplation, did you want to make any adoption by a 2/3 vote or by a majority vote? And whichever way you would like to go, I would just recommend maybe specifying it in the amendment or a future amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Really, I'm not sure where I'm at on this. I do want to hear the answer to the questions. I do worry that some of this is stuff that we decide is mundane. So even their mundane policies, like dress code, yeah, we can bring it to the House, or but do we really want to bring every policy that we do to the House? I don't know. I would be interested in the scope of what this proposal is. What are the policies that we have currently that we would then bring before the body and vote on?
Thank you. Representative Burt, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to on and for the rule change.
Thank you. Any other members for your first time? First time, first time, first time, seeing none. Second time, to the sponsor, Representative Yin.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion for an amendment?
Yeah, I think we generally have a writing, have it in writing. Chief Clerk.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, our rules do say anything brought to the floor needs to be in writing. So I don't want to violate a rule while we're debating a rule about a rule that we want to get rid of. I think that's where we are. Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So to answer some of these questions, the first one being, does the House doing this by itself stop the Senate from, does the Senate, as far as I know, the Senate isn't proposing anything like this. I didn't present it to the Senate. I think, frankly, It's something that we as a body should decide what we want to do. It's going to be specifically in our House rules. So within our joint rules, it's House rules, Senate rules, joint House and Senate rules. So this only decides what happens in our body and whether that management council affects our body. I think the status quo in the Senate, if they don't pass something similar, management council will decide what happens in their body with management council policy. For example, the dress code is one of them, right? So do we want another body helping to decide what happens in our body without our consent? That's the intent. That's part of the intent here. When it comes to 2/3 versus 1/3, the language is adopted by rule of the House. So it would either require at the beginning of the session being in the rules that get presented to us, which is a majority vote, or it would be a change of our rules to implement that policy in the middle of a session, which would be a 2/3 vote. The possible amendment that I had considered, which is making it a majority vote, because it has to be in writing, I don't have that here. So using the language, unless adopted by the rule of the House, just depends on the timing of when that policy would come in, whether it's the beginning of the session or in the middle of the session. And then interim topic consideration. So interim topic consideration is interesting. The Management Council authority is control of the Legislative Service Office. The Legislative Service Office is necessary for interim committee meetings. And so in my view, this rule doesn't affect the interim topic process at all. How Management Council does that is for best use of the funds that we have for LSO, so the best management of LSO resources. And that's how interim topics are managed, on how we best use our time and LSO's time. And so I think the interim topic isn't affected by this rule at all. I do think we should contemplate whether we want chairman to have more control over the interim process. But I think right now, this rule is written, doesn't touch the interim topic process at all. I do think that I don't have a list of all of the Management Council policies. I do think it would be interesting to have our Rules Committee in the interim contemplate all of that. And if we do want to make a statement that we want to be the ones considering all those rules, maybe we can evaluate all Management Council policy and determine what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep. Because right now, as it stands, we are bound by all Management Council policy, just inherent in the fact that we haven't said anything against it. So do I know all of Management Council policy? I don't think anyone in this body does, except for maybe someone in LSO. And so again, I think it's not really a great idea to be bound by those policies without actually knowing what they are. So I do think it's a good idea either for us to have consent or for us to also evaluate that during the interim as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge your aye vote.
So members, we are going to vote on the motion to amend our House Rules number 1 by adding 1-4. You've been provided that. Chief Clerk, it requires a 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kinner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker, Closing vote. Are there any changes? Air, aye to no. Henderson, aye to no. Duncan, aye to no. Flitner, aye to no. Further changes? Summers, aye to no. Further changes? Harshman, aye to no. Oakley, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Romero Martinez, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 36 aye, 24 no.
By your vote, you have voted not to amend House Rule 1 by the addition of House Rule 1-4. I'm going to make just a brief comment on this, members. In our last Management Council meeting, we also assigned 2 subcommittees or working committees. I can't remember exactly how. One was to look at our rules and procedures, and the second was to look at legislative compensation. And I think in visiting with Representative Yin this morning, I think there is a place for our Rules Committee to actually do some interim work and prepare something for the 67th legislature to take both our rules, our policies, evaluate what management policies, how those fit together. And so the 67th legislature can have this, we'll lay the groundwork in the 66th, so the 67th can have this, have all the pieces on the table. And so Rules Committee, I think at least, unless I hear some strong opposition, I think we'll have at least maybe 1 or 2 Rules Committee and some subcommittees made up of that to take up parts of this issue. And so the members that return in the 67th, when you adopt your rules at the beginning of your session, you'll start with the temporary rules of the 66th, but then in that 5th day, I think by the 5th day, we'll have done some of the groundwork to hopefully help you get to the place you want to be, addressing some of the issues that were part of or at the heart of what Representative Yin brought in this motion. So I thank you for the debate, Representative Yin and the body. I think it is something we need to address, and we'll work on that. So I appreciate that. All right. A couple notes. I've got a couple introductions to make here. So we have our doctorate of the day, Dr. Monger, and our nurse of the day, Nurse Winnie from Cheyenne Regional Medical and Cowboy State Healthcare here. Please welcome them to the house. Welcome. We appreciate your service. Keep an eye on Brown. Keep an eye on Brown. All right. Members, if you take a look at the website, and this came up during the discussion on the last motion, the interim topic form is now on the website. So if you or your constituents are interested in interim topics, you can start making submittals there. It seems like it's awful early in the session to be thinking about the interim, but our staff is, of course, preparing for that work. All right, so members, we're going to go on with introduction, reading, and reference of bills. You will note that I put up 20-some bills. There are more bills, and some of them are your personal bills. My goal, as I told you, was everybody got their first order bill, first preference bill, and then I made some decisions, and there's very few people that got a second bill. And so you'll note that I have the last 2 bills on the list, and you're welcome to kill one if you like, but make it the first one. Never mind. But there are still bills remaining, and some of them are yours. And if there is a means to have those bills basically pulled from the table and brought to the floor to be considered. It's a motion on the floor. You just ask, it's a majority vote, and then if that is it passes, we'll go forward. I picked these bills. I looked at what the committee work already has ahead of them. I looked at, the topics of the bills, and what we had ahead of us with both the budget week next week and everything. And I just made a call on many of them saying, I think we can reasonably get through these and everybody gets a shot. I recognize some of you may disagree. A bill that you think is important wasn't brought up, and you'll have that opportunity. What I'd like to do this morning is I'd like to exhaust as much of this list as we can. And if we get through the entire list, great. And then we'll go to second, third reading, general file, and then at the end of the day, you'll have time to decide if you can muster the votes to get those bills pulled, and we'll take introductory or pull from the table type votes toward the end of the day. I just want to see what your stamina is too. This is a test of stamina. So the other thing I want to mention is right before we get into this is redistricting bill. House Bill 100 is on third reading today. I'm going to recommend to the body, and actually we'll probably we'll caucus, and we'll probably recess at noon and have a caucus, very short caucus, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the same room that we caucused last night, just to kind of get a sense of where the body is. And the question, and there's amendments on the website. I just want to get a sense, because what I want to make sure is when we send a plan down to the other end, we feel comfortable with it. We've done the good work we need. And whether we can do it all today, or whether we want the weekend to continue to refine what we're doing, I think that's what the question will be. So we'll have that. We'll be able to review some of those things in caucus and kind of get a sense of where the body is. I'm not trying to delay it. I'm trying to get us the best product we possibly can. So that'll kind of be the setup for our morning, but we will get our committee meetings. My intent will get to our committee meetings as soon as on time. So with that, we're at that order of business of bills on reading. Let's see, introduction, reading, and reference of bills. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 136.
House Bill 136, sponsored by Representative Eklund.
First reading of the bill.
Underground water contested case hearings.
Chairman Eklund, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move House Bill 136 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a one-liner in groundwater law. It clarifies that the applicant or petitioner for a permit has the burden of proof in a contested case for groundwater in a control area. Without this clarification, the senior rights holders in a control area may have the burden of proof placed on them, and in some cases that has happened. In fact, most cases that's happened. This bill ensures that in the future, in contested cases, the burden is clearly on the applicant to show that they meet the elements of Wyoming Statute 932C. So I'm convinced that the Wyoming water laws have served us very well. Many of them are very old, and there are some adjustments and clarifications that I believe need to come, and I'd like to do that. This one is a very small one, and I'd appreciate your consideration on it. If I'm able to continue here in the legislature, I'll probably bring other ones. They'll be very small and very specific, so that we don't mess up other laws or interfere with previous laws and precedents, and I stand for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Any questions or objections? Questions or objections? Representative Larson?
Mr.
Dan.
Chairman, I guess I have a question. Is the agency that deals with the water, is this something they are in favor of, or can you even say that?
Thank you. Any other members' questions or comments, questions or concerns? Representative Gray, please get to the mic because we're burning time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm wondering on this, shouldn't it say that, that the applicant or petitioner contesting the decision on the application should have the burden of proof? Like, I think I know what you're trying to do, but shouldn't it say that the one contesting the decision has that burden?
Thank you. Any others? Any others? Seeing none, 30 seconds. Chairman Eklund.
So I'm not sure. I hope to get everybody to the table to discuss this, especially the agency that administers these laws. should the burden of proof be laid on people that have had these water rights for years and can show that damage is done? Should the expense for that be placed on them, or should it be placed on the applicant wanting the junior right under them? That's a question I hope
Thank you
to
very
solve.
much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
you.
So members are voting on introduction. House Bill 136, Chief Clerk, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Blackburn. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 60 aye.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 136. It is so introduced and referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. I have two privileges of the floor. First, Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have in attendance up in the gallery today the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education Board, and a special recognition to Denise Larson, who might have a relative in this group. Please help welcome.
Well, welcome. Thank you for all your work. We appreciate what you do for our state. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, when we pack the chamber with all of my esteemed colleagues in the gallery you could pack it with 1,000 people and I would never get nervous. But today there's two individuals here that put me on my absolute best behavior at all times. Over on this side of the gallery, Mrs. Olson, and my little girl Eden has decided to join us for some political fun.
Well, welcome, Olson twins. I'm glad. We need you more often. We need better behavior out of Representative Olson. Any other privilege? I'm sorry, Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege. Friends, I've been asked by several of you, where are the coffee mugs? So know that your minority leader has taken it upon themselves over the past decade or so to get coffee mugs for our sessions. Know that they exist. I have one. You may not have mine, but the rest of them are upstairs. We'll bring them down next week. And this year, they're $5 each. And we have Joe Guido McGuire will be the enforcer to make sure I get paid. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate you doing that. It's fun for gifts and treasures as we of our service. I think maybe what you heard is where's the coffee? I don't know if you heard coffee mug. I think you heard where's the coffee? But we appreciate that. All right, we're at that order of business. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 137.
House Bill 137, sponsored by Representative Western.
First reading of the bill.
State land exchanges, public notice.
Representative Western, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 137 and ask for your favorable consideration. So I'm going to give you guys some context here. The land exchange process right now, it's long, it's confusing, and it's very opaque. Not a lot of transparency. And this bill intends to bring a lot higher level of transparency to this process. Right now, when a landowner submits an application, it remains confidential for about 18 months or so. So it wasn't until 18 months later that the public is finally included in the process. This bill, what it does is it moves that timeline way up, where an applicant has to disclose OSLI has to disclose an application that's been submitted within 30 days. So everyone knows at the same time, we're all included because these are our lands owned by the state. I think it's only fair that everyone is included and that we put some transparency in this process. So I ask for your favorable consideration.
Any other member in opposition? Member in opposition? Member in opposition? Seeing none. Follow up. Chief Clerk, we're calling the roll. 2/3 vote. Introduction, House Bill 137.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson-Lloyd, Larson-Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker. Bear. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 60 aye.
Members, by your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 137. It is referred to Committee Number 5, Agriculture. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 139.
House Bill 139, sponsored by Representative Ottman.
First reading of the bill.
Protecting Wyoming's land and water resources.
Thank you. Representative Ottman, you have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to move House Bill 139 and ask for your affirmative vote. Wyoming has a long tradition of conserving its land and natural resources while responsibly promoting multiple uses of land, maintaining wildlife habitat, and preserving resources. Wyoming's farmers and ranchers have consistently and dutifully cared and continue to care for the land and water in Wyoming and are the original conservationists and good stewards of Wyoming's abundant resources. Wyoming has always held private property rights in the highest regard, including enshrining certain rights and protections for private property owners in Article 1, Sections 32, 33, and 39 of the Wyoming Constitution. The principles of private property ownership have been critical to the success of Wyoming's top industries, including agriculture and mining. On January 27th, our current president enacted Executive Order 14008. Section 216 of this executive order establishes a goal of conserving at least 30% of our lands and waters and putting them in federal protection by 2030. Achieving the goal of conserving 30% would require conserving a land area several times larger than the size of Wyoming. The federal government's 30% conservation goal would interfere with the state's constitutional and traditional power over land and water. A federal conservation mandate of this magnitude has great potential to devastate Wyoming's economy and industry. And what we're doing with this bill is making it so that the federal government cannot come in and obtrusively take over and put out of work our land uses and what we've done in our counties. I have 2 counties that.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, you have 1 minute. You can start on. I see other people at the mic. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. House Bill 139 tries to push back on federal policy, but instead it hurts Wyoming and Wyoming values. House Bill 139 prohibits a governmental entity from holding a conservation easement, including our state wildlife agency. Let me tell you a story. My family and our neighbor decided to sell a conservation easement on a large swath of ground. The private land trusts were afraid of the project. Our state wildlife agency was not, and they agreed to do it. In the end, the land trust of the cattlemen agreed to hold our easement, but the point is the Wildlife Agency of Wyoming has a role to play in holding and funding conservation easements. Conservation easements have preserved old family ranches in my valley, and without them, more of our state would be owned by out-of-state billionaires. I urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Kinner, 13 seconds.
Why a no on conservation easements?
9 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is, does this negate all the conservation easements that are currently
Thank you
active
very
right now?
much. Thank you very much. So Representative Ottman, you have 30 seconds. Please proceed.
Thank you. And in answer to that question, no, it does not negate any conservation easements at all. The only thing that it does, because we all believe in private property rights, we have that opportunity, and that is our right. What this does is just ask if anything comes down, that it would there would be an application that would go through the county commissioners to check to make sure of that these easements are not in perpetuity. Okay, that there is something on there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, members, we're voting on introduction. House Bill 139, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt,
Aye.
Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Aye, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 30 aye, 30 no.
By your vote, you voted not to introduce House Bill 139, and it is indefinitely postponed. Next bill, House Bill 141.
House Bill 141, sponsored by Representative Haroldson.
First reading of the bill.
Coal-fired facility closures, litigation funding amendments.
Thank you. Representative Harrelson, you have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move House Bill 141 and ask for your favorable consideration. So last year we had House Bill 207, and if you guys remember, we took $1.2 million, placed it in an account for the governor to use to stand up to any state that would breach Commerce Clause. Over the last year, luckily, we've not had to use that, but we still have this $1.2 million expenditure sitting out there. So upon further investigation, we have found that there is a need for this money and these funds to be used for the protection of coal-fired power plants, but to broaden the scope of who we can actually, this money can be used to fight against the federal government and private entities like certain organizations that would bring suit against states. And so this right here, the verbiage in this bill would open it up to where this $1.2 million could be used to protect our coal fire industry against federal overreach, or also special interest groups that would look at hampering our economy through our coal fire power. So this is no appropriations. The money's already there. It's already been set. We're just opening up where the government or the governor can use to actually walk out the protection of these coal fire facilities. So I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Members, any opposition or questions? Opposition or questions? Opposition or questions? Seeing none. Chief Clerk, please call the roll on introduction. House Bill 141, 2/3 vote.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 54 aye, 6 no.
By your vote, you voted to introduce House Bill 141. It is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 144.
House Bill 144, sponsored by Representative Roscoe.
First reading of the bill.
Active Transportation and Recreation Grant Program.
Representative Roscoe, you have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body. I bring to you House Bill 144 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is the Active Transportation and Recreation Grant Program. And just to see if Wyoming communities had any interest in this list of things on the second page of your bill, such as safe pedestrian and bicycle routes to our schools for our children, bicycle path networks and on existing roads, sidewalk and crosswalk networks, also projects to develop a walkable Main Street. So we sent out a survey to all the counties in Wyoming, and unlike redistricting, we got a lot of response, and they were all in favor of this last list. A lot of communities already had projects on the books, and we're just waiting for some funding. So this bill is asking for some funding from the Arpa Conservation Fund, which there is money there, but they're asking for $40 million for the biennium. And this money would go directly to existing programs within YDOC, existing grant programs. So it would save a lot on administration. Also, 10% of that money would go to our state parks and existing grant programs that they have, and also the cultural resource programs that they have existing. Any community can apply for these grants. There is a 20% match, so everybody has a little skin in the game. It's just a healthy community and city planning effort. And these projects.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Larson Lloyd. Questions or opposition?
So just a question, if you could, you said 40 million a biennium, so would that be ongoing? And then second question, doesn't YDOT through their grants and loans have the ability to do that currently if there's a plan in place?
Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, we're talking in the bill 40 million general fund or 40 million from Arpa?
Any other questions or objections? Questions? Seeing none, back to the bringer. Representative Roscoe, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is general fund money, and it's one time. There'll be 20 million, and we can talk about this if we could just pass this introduction. We can talk about this afterwards. That could be amended. And YDOT does have the facility to do these things. There are already programs in place that have been in place for a long time.
Thank you very much. Members, we're voting on House Bill 144. 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washut. Western. Worf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zwanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Yin, no to aye. Hallinan, no to aye. Ottman, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 30 aye, 30 no.
Members, by your vote, you voted not to introduce House Bill 144 and is indefinitely postponed. Next bill for consideration, House Bill 146.
House Bill 146, sponsored by House Appropriations.
First reading of the bill.
General Government Reports.
We have a representative from House Appropriations. Representative Kinner, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move House Bill 146 and ask for your favorable consideration. As many of you probably know that have been here for a while, our chief executive does not like us putting requests for reports and so on in the budget. So for the last few years, what we've chosen to do, because we feel those reports are necessary, we have a separate general government reports bill. And as you might imagine, when we make appropriations, there are occasions when we think it's very prudent for us to monitor how those monies are spent and so request a report. And so that's what we're trying to do here to help us track areas of interest and things that we want to monitor and make sure that the dollars are being spent as we thought that they should be. Now, one thing I might mention, since this is a general government report, Bill, if any of you have any reports that you might be interested in, you could certainly bring an amendment and add additional reports to this bill. But whereas you now know the purpose of it, we would hope that you would support this and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Discussion, questions, discussion, questions? Seeing none. Members, we are voting on introduction, House Bill 146. Two-thirds vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 60 aye.
By your vote, you voted to introduce. House Bill 146 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. Next bill for consideration is House Bill 149.
House Bill 149, sponsored by Romero Martinez.
Did I skip a bill?
I think we skipped a bill.
I don't have it on mine.
We just did 146.
The members, there's an order miss between what the chief clerk has puts on her roll call and what was, and we have it actually later in the order, So we'll stick with, if we try to change the order now, and I apologize for this, it is later in the order. It'll be the 17th bill, and I apologize. It'll still be heard. Just don't forget, somebody just went around the floor. Working the floor, that's called working the floor, folks. He'll be back around. So I apologize for that, Chairman. We'll continue with the order so that Chief Clerk doesn't have to change the roll call. All right, members, we're at that order of business of the introduction of House Bill 149.
House Bill 149, sponsored by Romero Martinez.
First reading of the bill.
Human life equality, prohibiting discriminatory abortions.
Thank you. 2 minutes. Please proceed. Representative Romero Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 149 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, colleagues, this is an old friend of the body. Last year, you might remember House Bill 161, right, with 162. This is bringing that back. What this does, if you look at page 1 of the bill, basically what this is doing is prohibiting abortions based on selective reasons and disabilities. And really what we're doing is this is complementary to all the other great legislation being drafted that protect both the child and the mother. This bill helps families, helps our society, and because of the unborn, if the unborn child is selected for an abortion on the basis of sex, race, color, national origin, or ancestry, this prohibits that. It's happening. We see sex-selective abortions where a preborn child is aborted just because the child is a woman, because it's of mixed race, because it's a boy. And this bill helps to fix that. And I just ask for your favorable consideration. It had overwhelming support last time, and I think we get it through this time. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Minority Floor Leader, 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, this bill failed for very good reason. This bill defines a disability as including a lethal fetal anomaly, which is defined as imminent death in utero or within 3 months of birth, making it a crime for a family to choose an abortion to prevent a fetus or baby's suffering. Next, this bill seriously interferes with a doctor's ability to have a meaningful conversation with a patient when there are decisions to be made about her care when an abnormality in fetal development is detected. On page 2, it says if the doctor even suspects that the woman even might choose to have a legal abortion, and she does, the doctor could be punished. Our doctors are between a rock and a hard place at the expense of a pregnant woman, her decision-making, and that vulnerable fetus or baby.
Anything further? All right, members, nothing else? Representative Romero Martinez, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to add anything. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If that's the case, that amendment can be heard. I just asked the body to continue. This has gone through 6 reviews at this point. I think it's pretty clean. If there's an amendment, I am amiable to the consideration of that, and I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, we're voting on introduction. House Bill 149, 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 46 aye, 14 no.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 149 is referred to Committee Number 10, Labor and Health. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 44. Oh, members, before the reading clerk does this, so House Bill 142, which Chairman Harshen was getting up to introduce, will go after 112. 112 and then 142. On your yellow sheet or on the order you were provided. And I apologize for that mix-up. House Bill 144, reading clerk.
House Bill 44, sponsored by Representative Newsom.
First reading of House Bill 144, or 44, excuse me, House Bill 44.
Mobile home and vehicle titles and transfers.
Thank you. Representative Newsom, please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I move House Bill 44 and ask for your favorable consideration. This is a cleanup bill for some vehicle titling issues that got left behind on mobile homes several years ago when we changed the statute that allows for the conjunctive and or in ownership. Mobile homes are defined under the motor vehicle statute and require a title transfer of ownership to be moved from one property to another, or when there is a transfer of ownership. There are also a couple more places that were left behind in a previous bill that requires the county treasurer to provide sales tax receipt to be supplied to the applicant when paying tax on a new vehicle purchase. In Section 3, on the last 2 pages, is a cleanup of application for duplicate title process. Presently, everyone on the face of a title must sign the duplicate application, which, as you can imagine, becomes difficult for some who have other owners that work out of state. This change would allow any owner who appears on the face of the title to make application for a duplicate. This is not the sale or transfer of a title. It is simply getting the paperwork of a duplicate title. This makes the process of getting that duplicate title easier for owners, our clerks, and our treasurers. Thank you.
Discussion or questions? Discussion or questions? Discussion, questions? Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have a question. It looks to me like on a transfer of a motorhome, if you have 2 or 3 owners, one person can transfer ownership as opposed to all of the owners or 2 owners. Is that correct? And why is that?
Anything further? Anything further? Chairman Greer.
It was a good bill. To answer that question, the answer is no. If there's a conjunctive and you're clear with the type of ownership under Wyoming law, then it requires the signatures. And that's the intent of the clerks. So I'll be more than happy to walk that through with the good chair of appropriations. Hate to see them wrong twice in a day, but.
Thank you. Point of order. All right, any further? Anything further? Seeing none. Representative Newsom, if you'd like to respond.
So as our good country lawyer pointed out, there is an and an or, and that makes the difference as to whether you need multiple signatures on a title, whether it is an and type of ownership and an or type of ownership, which an individual could sell a mobile home. Thank you.
Well, members, you don't get an and in this choice. You'll get an or, aye or no. We're voting on introduction. House Bill 44. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Ayer, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kinner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Romero Martinez. Sweeney. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 60 aye.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 144. It is referred to Committee Number 8, Transportation. Next bill, House Bill 54.
House Bill 54, sponsored by Representative Larson Lloyd.
First reading of the bill.
State Parks Recreation Management Authority.
Thank you. Representative Larson Lloyd, you have 2 minutes. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 54 and ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, with the policy that we established a number of years ago to develop more outdoor recreation opportunities around the state for our citizens, we found that we run into some bottlenecks where there are sometimes opportunity on state lands, but state lands doesn't have the capacity to administer outdoor recreation. State parks does, but there's no mechanism there to allow leasing for recreational uses of the state lands to the state parks to administer that. This bill fixes that and will allow state parks to be a lessee, and it doesn't usurp the right of other lessees on the property that may have leases. If there's an opportunity there, it would give for citizens to use that, and state parks felt it was fine. State lands felt it would be fine. Then they could develop those recreational opportunities for citizens around the state, and then it provides means for them to take. It provides the ability for them to then maintain those resources, which have not been done previously. So I'd ask for your support on the bill.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions or comments? Questions? Seeing none, members were voting on House Bill 54. 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Ayer. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Harshman. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 50 aye, 10 no.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 54. It is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Next bill for our consideration, House Bill 64.
House Bill 64, sponsored by Representative Brown.
First reading of the bill.
Vehicle service contracts.
Thank you very much. Representative Brown, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 64 and ask for your favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pretty simple bill. I actually brought this last year and we ran it through. It just missed out on the time on the other side. Pretty non-controversial. What we're doing is a consumer protection bill that just opens up and expressly authorizes vehicle service contracts to basically replace key fobs and keys if they become inoperable. There's a few other small tweaks and whatnot, but it passed pretty resoundingly out of here, and I'm just hoping that I can get it through this time around. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any members have questions or objections? Questions or objections? Questions? Questions? Members, we are voting on introduction, House Bill 64. 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Romero Martinez. Roscoe. Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith. Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Western. Wharf. Williams. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Baker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 59 aye, 1 no.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 64. It is referred to Committee Number 7, Corporations. Next bill, House Bill 72.
House Bill 72, sponsored by Representative Summers.
First reading of the bill.
Hunting license application funds.
Please proceed, Representative Summers.
Mr. Speaker, I move House Bill 72. Mr. Speaker, fellow members of the House, I bring you House Bill 72, hunting license application funds, and ask for your favorable introduction. There is increasing need for wildlife habitat improvement, hunter access, and wildlife crossing projects. House Bill 72 allows an unsuccessful hunter the opportunity to donate his submitted fees to either the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resource Trust Fund or the access account that was created last session with an increase in the conservation fee. Donations are just that, entirely voluntary. Mr. Speaker, I would stand for any questions.
Questions? Questions on the bill? 1 minute. Representative Henderson.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a quick question. I see on the fiscal note, there's some cost for this. Could you clarify what causes that?
Further discussion, further questions, further discussion, questions, further discussion, questions. Representative Summers, 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I think it was $5,000 and it would be for administrative costs to change the computer system, tweak the program.
Thank you. Members, we're voting on introduction, House Bill 72. 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Eklund? Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. Kenner. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan. LeBeau. McGuire. Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zwanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Olson. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 48 aye, 12 no.
By your vote, you voted to introduce House Bill 72. House Bill 72 is referred to Committee Number 6, Travel. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 89.
House Bill 89, sponsored by Representative Greer.
First reading of the bill.
Monthly ad valorem tax revisions enforcement.
Representative Greer, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I move House Bill 89 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, we have done a lot of work on collecting ad valorem taxes with the bankruptcies. I think the Revenue Committee has some revisions that maybe are coming through the other house that we're going to see some cleanup, some good work. There still exists a couple of little things that this bill is addressed to deal with, and there are situations where production will continue, and that production's going out, and the funds will come in to the company, and they're still not able to pay their taxes. Okay, there's a couple in existence right now, and it's very few. We have good industry overall, but there's still a couple of bad actors out there. What this bill will do, and it is going to require an amendment, but it would allow the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, when you are in arrears on taxes, both ad valorem and severance tax, is that the commission can go out and put a blank in. We decided we didn't want to plug. We just wanted to put a seal on that to stop the production until we get the payment of the taxes. But we wanted to make sure that the wellhead was still available, so when the operator came back with their taxes paid or a new operator came in, we could still keep those Wyoming jobs. So that's what this does. It's just filling a little gap. Hopefully that gap gets smaller and smaller with the good work we've done over the last couple of years. So ask for an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions on the bill? Seeing none, members, we're voting on introduction, House Bill 89. Two-thirds vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew, Baker, Banks, Bear, Blackburn, Brown, Burkhart, Burt, Clausen, Connolly, Crago, Duncan, Eklund, Air, Flitner, Fortner, Gray, Greer, Hallinan, Haroldson, Harshman, Heiner, Henderson, Jennings, Kenner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker.
Aye.
Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Larson Dan, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 52 aye, 8 no.
By your vote, you have voted to introduce House Bill 89. House Bill 89 is referred to Committee Number 9, Minerals. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 91.
House Bill 91, sponsored by Representative Greer.
First reading of the bill.
County officers' salaries.
Chairman Greer, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Bill 91, ask for your favorable consideration. Yes, I've been giving all my employees raises as well in this environment. This was brought to me really for the sheriffs, you know, the senior law enforcement officer in every one of our counties. In looking at the statutes and in inviting a good, robust discussion out of this body, I went ahead and did this for all of the county officers. Plus, it was easier to draft. Now, with that in mind, again, our Constitution requires us to set salaries for certain county officers. And then we have a statute that sets the salaries for a longer list of county officers. And so what I simply did was say all of our county officers, we would increase the amount that the counties can pay them so that the county commissioners have the discretion to be able to pay the employees or the people and they're most of them are elected, but be able to pay those people to have quality people and also understand the circumstances around what the particular county or size and scope of the job is. So I look at this as a local control issue. We still have to set a minimum and a maximum for the constitutional requirement. I would ask for your aye vote on this. However, if there's really only been one group, and that was the sheriffs who have asked for this. And so if you feel that a certain county officer shouldn't have a raise or whatever the case may be, we can amend that and pull it out. I'm really advocating for the one office myself with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Gray, 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge a no on this. Tying this to the pay of district court judges, I think, is really an error. That when we changed that in 2017, it's the highest in the state. It's $150,000, and tying it to that and the reason we changed it was because the competition in the legal field and what the payment structure is there. But I think this is kind of a different situation. So to change this cap, I think is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stith, questions or objections?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, just a question as to whether there's been any kind of cost salary analysis done. For county attorneys, it's pretty obvious they're underpaid, but for county assessors, clerks, is that also, sheriffs, is that also the case?
Thank you. Few remaining seconds. Seeing no one. Representative Chairman Greer, please, 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, with respect to the amount, we can put whatever amount we want in there. I maybe was being a little lazy trying to get this done and just went ahead and tied it to that amount. If this body wants to set it at 120, 130,000 or something, that would be fine. To answer the other question is no. Some people are worth more than others. Some counties are more expensive to live in. I'm going to trust my county commissioners to make those types of decisions, but no, there hasn't been. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members are voting on introduction, House Bill 91. 2/3 vote. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker. Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Clausen. Connolly. Crago. Duncan. Eklund. Air. Flitner. Fortner. Gray. Greer. Hallinan. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Jennings. No? Kinner, Knapp, Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan, LeBeau, McGuire, Nyman, Newsom, Nicholas, Oakley, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman, Paxton, Provenza, Rodriguez Williams, Romero Martinez, Roscoe, Schwartz, Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith, Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, Western, Wharf, Williams, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote is closed. 43 aye, 17 no.
By your vote, you voted to introduce House Bill 91 is referred to Committee Number 2, Appropriations. So members, we're going to stop here on introductions. We will pick up introductions at a later time. As you recall, Mr. Majority Floor will make a motion. We'll take committee announcements, and then if you would move quickly, as expeditiously as you can, to the Supreme Court room, we'll have a whole House caucus on redistricting. A whole House caucus on redistricting. I hope it doesn't last more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then the committee, folks that have committee meetings can get to their committee meetings. So, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Committee announcements, committee announcements, committee announcements. Chairman Paxton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet upon noon recess or 10 minutes after to consider one bill, House Bill 31, Wyoming's tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your committee number 7, Corporations, will meet 20 minutes after noon recess to hear House Bill 15, Political Subdivision Club liquor licenses, House Bill 55, Airport exemptions of liquor licenses, and House Bill 87, Insurance Investment Amendments.
Any other announcements? Any other announcements? Seeing none, excuse me. Members, we are in recess until 2 p.m. Please join quickly, as soon as you can, in the Supreme Court room for a caucus.